All right, we're recording.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And yes, Ms. Carroll, you can do the attendance now.
Okay. Just say here so that I can know that you're here when I call your name. Crystal Sison.
Here.
Christopher Blakely.
Here.
Holly Marth.
Here.
Anne Reed. Anne Reed.
She's here. We can't hear her, but she is here.
Okay. Laura Cristofanti.
Here.
Dennis Quisenberry.
Here.
Lebna Oblin.
Here.
Willie Sparrow.
Here.
Was that a here? For Sparrow?
Yes.
Okay.
Here.
Sean Williams. Sean Williams.
Present.
Thank you. Peter Danuki. Peter Danuki. Carl Baxter.
Present.
And Layla Tucker. Layla Tucker. That concludes the attendance.
Miss Carol, Dr. Peter is on the line. I don't think he is, he's unmuted.
I see him trying to come in.
Yeah, he's on 2 lines.
Okay, I have him.
All right, was everyone that's present been accounted for?
Well, I'm present, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, we got you, Peter.
Thank you. I was having a tech problem, but I'm here now.
All right. Okay, so next on our agenda, we have the election of the chair and vice chair. We're going to open the floor for nominations. From what I was told, you can nominate yourself for these positions if you would like, or you can nominate someone else. So we have, and we'll start with vice chair.
Well, actually, Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I believe you should start with the chair first.
Chair.
As we recall, the last meeting, it was a practice in this committee and the others. We opened the facilitation process for the staff liaison to open the nominations for chair. And then whoever was elected chair, that individual, he or she, would then facilitate the election of the committee's vice chair.
Thank you, Mr. Edie.
So if no objections to that, and our board attorney, Ms. Bruno, are you in line with that? Is everything okay with that procedure?
Yes, Mr. Edie.
Thank you, Ms. Bruno. So as the staff liaison, of course, I'm not voting, we're just facilitating. Since the chair is vacant, is there a nomination for someone to serve as the chairman of the EDAC committee?
I propose that, can I make a nomination?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Dennis Quisbury.
Okay, there's a nomination offered by Mr. Dianui. Mr. Quisenberry, do you accept that nomination as presented?
Yes.
Thank you.
Sean Williams, I second that.
Yes, sir, if you'd like to. Are there any other nominations? Seeing no nominations, once again, are there any additional nominations for chair?
It's already done.
Okay, seeing no nominations, is there a motion to close the nomination and open floor for chair?
Sean Williams moves so.
There's a motion on the floor by Mr. Williams to close the nomination. Is there a second to Mr. Williams' motion?
Second.
I believe that was Ms. Christophe or Mr. Baxter. Ms. Christophe was the
Correct.
first secretary.
Go ahead.
There's a
Agreed.
second. All those in favor of closing the nomination, please show forth by saying aye.
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 Any objections?
Aye.
I'm sorry, is there an objection?
I think that was an aye.
Aye, okay. Mr. Chairman, the motion passes unanimously, and I will turn the floor back over to you through acclamation and only being one candidate. Mr. Dennis Quisenberry is your chair. And Mr. Chairman, the floor is back to you to facilitate the election of the vice chair.
Thank you, Mr. Edie. Are there any nominations for vice chair?
I'd like to
I nominate, sorry,
Say again, Mr. Baxter.
Christopher Blakely, Honorable Blakely.
Chris Blakely. Dr. Blakely, do you accept the nomination?
I do.
Then I second it.
All right.
Thank you.
Are there any other nominations for co-chair, vice chair?
I'll nominate myself.
Please state your name.
Mr. Blake. Lara
Who is it?
Crispon.
All right. Ms. Carroll, did you get that?
I didn't know that last name.
We had a second nomination. Ms. Laura nominated herself,
I second the nomination.
and there was a second by Ms. Reed.
I got that.
Are there any other nominations? All right, if there are no other nominations, is there a motion to close the nominations for vice chair?
Sean Williams, I
So
move.
moved.
And a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Sparrow. So, Mr. Edie, it's been a long time since we've done the election. Do we allow the candidates to offer any reasoning for their election, or are we going to do just a straight vote?
Yes, sir, you have the opportunity, if you would like, since you have two candidates for the position, to give them an opportunity to express any desire if they'd like to for the chairman, vice chairship. It would also be a suggestion for your consideration, Mr. Chairman, that since there are two candidates, instead of having a voice vote, that you conduct a vote via hand, and we will count, staff will count the number of hands for each one of the candidates to ensure we have an accurate count. We did not take that approach for the chair since there was only one candidate. But ultimately, it is the will of the chair and also the will of the committee as you all like to proceed.
Thank you. I think we will allow them to give a short explanation of their reasoning for wanting to do the position. In addition to, we will use the hand voting system as it seems the most efficient way to go from here. Mr. Blakely, Dr. Blakely, since you were nominated first, I will allow you to give 30 to 60 seconds on why you think you would be a great vice chair for EDAC.
Right. Thank you all. Thank you for the nominations for those who have nominated. My name is Christopher Blakely. I currently serve as the director of our Multicultural and Leadership Development Center at Florida Gulf Coast University, and I serve internally as assistant vice president for campus life and dean of students at Florida Gulf Coast University. The reason why I feel like I'll be an excellent fit is that I try to identify spaces in life where I can live out purpose. I think the area of diversity and inclusion has been my purpose for the last 10 years working in higher education. And I think it's important that I bring a perspective of how to help assist and facilitate change, but also build collaboration. I think it's really important as we work together in creating systematic change that we look to build for the margins to support those who are underrepresented, as well as we support one another by building through collaboration. So I'll end with saying that my guiding principles through my work and what I do is based off the four agreements, and that's one, to be impeccable with my word, to not make assumptions, to ask questions because they do produce answers, to always do my best, and lastly, to not take things personal. So wherever the vote is today, I know that I will follow those practices to continue to provide support to this committee and the community.
Thank you, Dr. Blakely. We appreciate that.
What?
Ms. Laura?
I think I should complete after that. That was beautiful, Dr. Blakely. I just, I'm at a point now where I feel like I'd like to get a little bit more involved in the community as I have in the past. I used to be involved in several committees, and I took a step back because there were some personal things that I was going through. But now that I have 2 kids going in college and I'm only down to 1, I have a little bit more time. I think I'm very involved in the community in every way I can be. I've worked with the Housing Authority for over 16 years. And again, my job has always been to inspire. Property management is usually to collect, evict, and whatnot. I always changed, I kind of changed that mindset more to getting people to understand we're here. This is a temporary move for you. It's time to learn how to go on and move on to bigger and better things. It hasn't been very successful because for the most part, it's a hard mentality to break, but I have had a few people who have taken that, taken some of my, some of the lessons I've taught them, I guess, and moved on to bigger and better things, which is a big deal for me. It's empowering to see people wanting to do better. My goal, obviously, besides raising my last child, I'd like to stay involved because I am from a different country myself. So diversity is something that's very important to me. I have a sister that's also, well, I'm not gonna go into that, but everything that we stand for in this particular committee are things that are very personal to me. So, I'd like to try and give it a shot. And if I don't get it, I sadly understand because I have a lot of respect for Dr. Blakely. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Laura. So we appreciate both candidates offering their opinions and their insight.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
If we may, for the consideration, I don't know if the attorney wants to consult also, but because of the purposes of Zoom, we're considering maybe the committee having the opportunity to submit their vote for vice chair as some semblance of a ballot to our recording secretary as a private message, and hopefully Tony could record the vote. Ms. Bruno, do you have anything to add to that conversation?
That's exactly what I would recommend to ensure the integrity of the vote is to send a private message to the recording secretary.
All right.
If you go into the chat, you will see the option in the to section. You can send your vote to Tony Carroll and Crystal. I'm going to give the screen over to Crystal Torres Nunez for her to put up the names of the 2 candidates. Crystal, I'm going to stop the share and I'm going to give it over to you.
I apologize. Hopefully your names are spelled properly because I was typing in a hurry. Ms. Laura, is that spelled properly?
Yeah.
Okay, can you spell it?
It's CHRISPHONT.
Yes.
There's a T in front of the E.
T in front of the E, that's the name.
Of the E. And then remove the other T that's in front of the P, as in Paul. Correct.
Okay. So once again, as was reiterated by the board attorney, if you would send your private message to recording secretary Tony Carroll, and then at the end of it, she will announce the person who received the majority of the votes. Tony, are you okay with that?
Yes, I'm fine.
Thank you. Okay, by a show, are there any other committee members? If you just give us a thumbs up in your camera, if you need additional time to cast your vote. Okay, I don't see any thumbs up. So it looks like everyone who needs
Nominees
to.
don't vote, right, Mr. Edie?
Yes, you may vote as a nominee. Correct, Madam Board Attorney? The nominees have the pleasure of voting. They're still voting members.
Yes.
So Ms. Christopher, yes, you do can vote.
And appreciate your patience. Your call will be answered in the order in which it was received. Please continue to hold.
I'm coming in late, sorry. How are we voting?
Ms. Tucker, right now the votes are going to our recording secretary
Okay.
via the private chat.
Okay, so we're gonna put it in the private chat, okay.
Yes, to Tony Caro, C-A-R-O.
Okay, let me see.
Has everyone voted?
Yes,
Tucker,
yes, I voted.
okay. Yes, ma'am, Ms. Carroll. We did the straw vote poll, and looks like no one put their thumbs up saying they didn't get a chance to vote. So I believe if you go ahead and count up the numbers and let us know what the winner was for that election.
Will do. Give me about 2 minutes or less.
Thank you for calling Insurance. My name is Agnes.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, ma'am.
this is Holly Marth. Just so everyone knows, I wasn't driving my car earlier. My husband was, but now I'm back at my home office. So I wasn't
All
being
right.
dangerous on the roads, everyone.
Thank you for being safe.
All right, the vote is completed.
Okay, will you share the winner of that vice chair election, Madam Recording Secretary?
Yes, the winner is Dr. Christopher Blakely.
All right, thank you. Thank you to everyone who voted. And thank you, Dr. Blakely, for volunteering.
Thank you. Thank you, committee. Appreciate it.
All right. All right, there's no other matters concerning the vote. We're going to move on to the next item on the agenda. We have the approval of our agenda from this meeting.
Move to approve the agenda.
Is that Mr. Williams?
Yes,
All
sir,
right.
sorry.
Mr. Williams made a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Holly Marth, second.
Thank you. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Thank you. We're gonna move on to the approval of the minutes. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
Move to approve the minutes as written.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. And is there a second?
Second, Lubna.
Thank you, Ms. Lubna. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Thank you. Did you get what you needed, Ms. Carroll?
Who seconded that motion for the approval of the minutes? I heard 2 people.
Ms. Lubna?
Okay, I got it. Thank you.
All right. All right, next on the agenda, we have Ms. Kathy Bruno. She is a board attorney. She's going to do a parliamentary procedure and policy overview for us. Floor is yours, Ms. Bruno.
Thank you very much, Mr. Quisenberry. If I could go ahead and share my screen, let's see how I can do that. And I'm sure that many of you have served on this committee before, so it's you're very familiar with a lot of this, but board policy does require that I go through it with you, and it's always good practice just to get a little refresher. So I'll try not to make it too painful. So the first thing I just want to point out to you is that prior to board policy 1.20, there's actually another policy, 1.19, which discusses community engagement. And these board advisory committees are part of this community engagement. And the reason that we have these community advisory boards is so that you have an opportunity to provide input, advise the board, provide the board with support, and sometimes they'll have actual topics that they want you to provide them advice and guidance on. You do have a fiduciary duty in this role. You want to make sure that you're not receiving any type of personal benefit for yourself, for your employer, or any entity that you are contracted with. Membership to these committees is through appointment by the board. If you miss 3 meetings of a committee, you will be removed from membership, and that's really important. The effective term is 2 years beginning in September. And I will tell you that the board is very, very pleased to have all of you participate and give them guidance through these committees. You are required to meet pursuant to board policy, September, October, November, January, February, March, and April. You've already selected your chair and vice chair. Each committee is required to have that. And you are required to provide the board with quarterly reports. And then, as I said earlier, they're also sometimes mixed with that quarterly reports on a subject that is provided to you by the superintendent to address the board with. Your committee meetings are videotaped so that they are preserved in our YouTube channel. You are required to have public comment. You are required to address and comport yourself with proper professional decorum. And you're lucky because you do not actually need to have a quorum to conduct business. Prior to meetings, you are supposed to, at least the chair is supposed to meet with your board liaison just to discuss things prior to your meetings. And of course, your other involvement, as I said before, is when you report to the actual full board during briefing meetings. So there are all kinds of different committees. And let me go back here. Oops. Sorry, I think I have to get out of this and go back to where I wanted to be. I wanted to talk a little bit more about EDAC, and I passed it. So in terms of what your requirement is and what your mission is, it's really to help and enhance the system with regards to anything dealing with equity and diversity. You'll provide input regarding revisions to student assignments, plans, proposals with regarding school sites construction, when we decide to abandon the facility. And you'll also have some type of input, or at least have some type of guidance or discussion, at least I hope you do, when the school board discusses the proximity plan. Now, as an advisory committee, because you are more than a fact-finding committee, you will also be providing the board with advice that they may actually take action on. You are subject to sunshine and public records. All of your meetings must be public and at all times, and they must be properly noticed. All of your meetings, you must take minutes, and those minutes are open to the public for them to inspect. And all of your records, any document that you create through this committee is a public record. So you must maintain them. So how do you go about in operating effectively your committee? And the policy does require you to employ Robert's Rules of Order. And Robert's Rules of Order is pretty simply just to make sure that there's fairness, there's some balance, the majority decides, but the minority's rights are protected. And it also helps with having the meetings move forward in a uniform and good fashion so that you can accomplish things and actually get to your goal. Anytime you want to do anything or take any type of action, which you did, for example, when you voted for your chair and your vice chair, you must have a motion. Anyone can bring a motion. You just pretty much say, get the attention of the chair. Mr. Chairman, I would like to make a motion. I move that we do whatever it is. Remember that your recording secretary is taking all of this down. So sometimes I would recommend that you try to write your motion in advance to make sure that you get the words that you want, and also to help her so she records it properly. Every motion requires a second. So once the motion is made, then the second. I frown upon, and I know that board member Betsy Vaughn's on this call and she knows this, I frown upon when motions are made with so moved. Robert's Rules really requires you to be very specific in the motion that you're trying to make. Once the motion is made, the chair will restate the motion. It's moved by so-and-so and seconded by so-and-so that we do this. At that point, it's open for discussion. Robert's Rules uses the word question, but you can say discussion or you can say debate. That's when you have an opportunity to actually talk about the motion and the action that is being proposed by the motion. Feel free to fully discuss it, fully debate it, make sure that you, and this really falls on the chair, to make sure that everyone has an opportunity to discuss it. And if you want to put a time limit on those discussions from the get-go, you can say we're going to have 3 minutes per person on this particular topic. That's up to you. The body can decide that. Normally, Robert's Rules gives 10 minutes, but that may be long. It just depends on how your committee wants to move forward with that. Make sure that when you are talking about your motion, that you stick to the topic of your motion. You don't want to go off on a tangent and speak about other things that are not relevant to the motion. Now, let's say that it's going a little bit too long and you think it's time to really close the debate. You can do that by asking that the debate be closed, and it requires a 2/3 vote to be able to do that, depending on how many for your committee. It's very important that when you are discussing your motion that you be respectful of each other. Sometimes these issues can be hot and heavy, but you want to make sure that you always use proper decorum, and remember that you're always being recorded, and this will be viewed by the public and can be viewed also by other board members. You want to stick to the subject, make sure that what you're discussing is germane to the motion. And if you try to direct everything to the chair, this helps with controlling and avoiding bringing in personalities. For example, you made a motion, there's discussion. Instead of talking to the person that you're having a disagreement with or you don't agree with what they're saying, bring it to the chair, because this really helps with the formalities and it helps to avoid the personalities from leaking into the discussion. You can always try to limit it. Mr. Chairman, I move to limit the discussion to 2 minutes per speaker, and that requires a 2/3 vote. You can always say, I move that this goes to the previous question. At this point, you feel that the discussion is way too long and you're ready for the debate to end. Let's move on with this. I move the previous question, or I move to end the debate. At that point, the chair will put the motion to a vote. Are you ready for the question? Or seeing no more discussion, let us proceed with the vote. And then you guys take your vote, and yes or no, or however you guys end up taking it, by hand vote or aye, then at that point, it is the chair's responsibility to announce whether or not the motion has carried or whether or not the motion has failed. And the chair should say the motion carries 7-0, the motion carries 15-0, whatever it may be. Now, this is where it can get a little tricky because sometimes you may like the motion, but you think that you need to tweak some words in it. You can by amending the motion. You get the chair's attention. Mr. Chairman, I move that the motion be amended by adding the following words, or I move that the motion be amended by striking out the following words. After the recognition, the chairman will again restate what has been the motion with regards to the amendment that's pending. A second is needed, and you can only have 2 amendments per motion, and they must be addressed separately. Now, here's what you have to remember. Once you do that first amendment, you have to vote on the amendment. You're not voting on the full motion. The motion is still on the table. It's still there. It's not being acted upon. You are only voting on the amendment. Now, let's say that the amendment passes. Then you can move forward and vote for the amended motion. Let's say you want to substitute. It's not that I really want to amend it. I just think that we need to substitute the entire motion. Instead of getting the slide for the playground, I want to get swings. So let's do a motion to substitute the motion for the slides and make it swings, versus like an amendment where I want to get green slides versus red slides. You're completely changing the topic a little bit more substantively than just an amendment. You can also say, you know, we've been discussing this and we're not making any progress. Mr. Chairman, I move that we postpone the question until our next meeting. You can also say, you know what, we're just not going to get anywhere with this motion. We're not making progress, and I don't think we're going to make any progress. Mr. Chairman, I move to postpone this question indefinitely, and that basically kills the motion. The other one, you can say that, you know, I move to postpone it until a subcommittee has an opportunity to review this further and bring back a report. But when you move to postpone indefinitely, it's not coming back. You can also withdraw your motion. Let's say that you made an amendment and then you realize, well, that's not really what I meant. Mr. Chairman, I would like to withdraw my motion. Now, what happens when you are moving forward, you've already adopted your agenda, then all of a sudden you guys find yourself on a tangent and completely off of what you're talking about and what you're supposed to be talking about. You're not following the agenda. Without recognition, you could say, call for orders of the day. I need us to get back on the agenda. I need us to get back on track. Call for the order of the day. Let's say that, you know, there's a very important issue. It happens to be number 5 on the agenda. You really think it needs to be number 1 on the agenda, and you won't be able to stay for the hour meeting, so you really want to get it done. Mr. Chairman, I would like to suspend the rules and move item number 5 to position number 2. Let's say that you're having some technical difficulties. You can't hear very well. Or let's say you're in the building and it's a little bit too cold. Mr. Chairman, point of personal privilege, and you don't have to wait for the recognition. You can just say point of personal privilege, and the chairman will say, well, what's your point? There is too much noise, I can't hear. It's a little bit too cold. Can I move my seat? Or whatever it is that you feel that you need to do. This is a personal privilege. Again, you are in the meeting and all of a sudden it's getting a little ruckus. People are talking out of turn, or the subject matter, we're off point again. Mr. Chairman, and again, you don't have to wait for recognition, but I usually just say, Mr. Chairman, point of order. I rise to a point of order. I need us to get back on task. I need us to go ahead and start following the rules again. Now, what about if you're in the middle of a discussion and you don't understand something, such as in my example here is the balance in a budget item. Point of information, I need some clarity on this. Can you please explain this to me? Now, let's say that there's an issue that comes up with regards to parliamentary inquiry. Are we allowed to make a third amendment to this? Or are we supposed to vote on the amendment first and then vote on the, I'm confused, completely confused. What are we supposed to do? What does Robert's rule say? Point of parliamentary inquiry, can you please explain what we're supposed to do next from a parliamentary standpoint? What does Robert's rule say? We already did nominations and elections, which is fine. I think you guys did that well. Of course, the chair, you're responsible for running the meeting. You're responsible for helping to restate the motion, sometimes even helping your members find the right words for the motion, reminding your members to make the second, and helping them with parliamentary procedure, making sure that you monitor the debate to ensure that everybody has an opportunity to talk. And not only that, but sometimes you'll have those who are for it and some who are against the motion. Try to rotate that too so that both sides have an opportunity to express their views. And then of course, once the vote is done, you process the vote and announce the results of the vote. You also prepare the agenda, which is very important. So let's say that the chair says something that you do not agree with. You can always appeal the decision of the chair. The person who's appealing that decision can speak one time, and then the chair may speak twice. Good of the order is for any comments that you may have with regards to your observations in terms of your committee, the projects that your committees are doing, as well as if there's anything that has happened that you feel needs to be brought up that a member did or some type of issue that has come up, you can bring that up during good of the order as well. And that is a little snapshot of parliamentary procedure and your responsibilities under 1.20. I hope I didn't bore you too much. I know you guys are seasoned in this, but I wanted to give you an update.
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Ms. Brunel.
And then you will have some documents that were sent to you that has a little cheat sheet with regards to parliamentary procedure and Board Policy 1.20, as well as a little cheat sheet on some of your responsibilities.
Okay. Thank you. Yes, Mr. Peter.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I want to congratulate you and Dr. Blakely for your election. But at this point, this being EDAC, I want to acknowledge the fact that Attorney Bruno is the first minority attorney of the school board of Lee County. That is not a mean achievement. I don't know, I'm not sure about whether it's the first woman. That may be true. And when I listen to you, I am just so proud that some of the things like having Crystal, having Jarrett, having all this moving on, we are moving the needle, and it's so beautiful for the district. It's so beautiful to see you do it so well. Thank you so much. My question, however, is I want to be very clear about if I have something I want the whole group to get, we used to have somebody else, who do I send it to? Besides the chairman, who in your office would we send it to? And then it's vetted by Jarrett and by the chairman, and then you can either what it's being sent to the group, because I don't want to violate the sunshine law. Once again, congratulations, Attorney Bruno.
So I don't know how you guys have the process. My recommendation would be that it goes to the secretary.
Yes, ma'am. Ms. Bruno, that has been the process so far. If there is correspondence that committee members have requested to send out, the information was sent to the recording secretary, who then in consultation either with committee chair, and in some instances, the board liaison would say, okay, that's something that we should send out, but specifically going through the committee chair. So it went to the recording secretary. The recording secretary then included the chair, the board liaison, and the staff liaison, and then the committee chair kind of gave the green light. That has been how it worked, at least for the past 2 years, Dr. Newey.
Thank you. And the other thing I want to say, Jarrett, now that we are at this point, I'm sure you met Tony Carlo. Welcome, Tony. You've been very good. But Jarrett has also been very helpful in guiding me, in guiding whenever I want something clarified. Jarrett and Crystal, thank you so much for the work you do in this position. Welcome. Ms. Bruno.
Thank
Thank you, Dr. Peter.
The only thing I would add to that, I'm sorry. The only thing I would add to that is the thing that you really have to be careful with in sunshine. Remember that sunshine applies to your public officials. So you have to be very, very careful that you don't find yourself in a position where you are with more than one board member. That's why you have one board member that's your liaison, and you happen to be discussing some type of business with regards to EDAC, and there's two board members there. So those are the kind of things that you need to be very careful with, because that's when you can have some issues that they're not allowed to discuss anything unless it's in the public and open when they are on the dais. So that's where you just keep that in the back of your mind too.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Bruno. Are there any other questions for Ms. Bruno before we move on? All right, so we're gonna move on to a little.
With that, Mr. Chairman, I'm gonna bid everybody a very good evening. And if anybody needs or has any further questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. And I'm wishing all of you the best year with EDAC, which is an awesome, awesome committee, and you guys do wonderful jobs. So thank you very much, and have a good rest of your evening and a good rest of your meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so we're gonna move on to a short recap of some of the things we did last year in EDAC and our board recommendations. All right. Did you share the screen for me, Mr. Edie?
Mr. Chairman, I thought you were going to share it.
Yeah, let me see. Hold on one second. There you go. All right, can everyone see it? Let me get to here. All right, very good. So I'm going to go just a few quick highlights from last year. We had Mr. Malloy come in and give a presentation on our community engagement and some of the things we're doing for the proximity plan in the upcoming year. This was great for us because it put a voice on the proximity plan from EDAC, so we can have some input into that. And those meetings are subsequently taking place. There's one this week, and we'll be proceeding to have our voice heard as they're doing these the new district proximity plans. Also, Mr. Mangan came in, the principal on assignment, and talked about the code of conduct. Additionally, we had a voice in some of the things that were taking place in those code of conducts, and some pages were added based on our recommendations and his presentation to us for the benefit of the students and involving all of our students and being inclusive in the code of conduct for all the students of Lee County schools. We had a presentation from Dr. Atkins. He gave us quite a list of things that were coming up for the school district. And it's always a pleasure to have him come in and present to us to kind of give us a temperature of where we're going next and how EDAC is going to be involved in those decisions. And so that was a great opportunity for us. Ms. Irma Lancaster, she was new to the district, the Director of Strategic Communications, also came in and presented to us and gave us some ideas of some things to expect from communication with the district as we are moving forward. That was one of our initiatives we wanted to do, was better communication between the school district and the community. So it was great to have her come in and give us some insight. Additionally, we visited South. I think in my time, this was the first time the committee visited an actual school. I think it was an excellent opportunity for us to go out and see the different programs that we are helping to have an impact on, seeing those in action, and also seeing what goes on in the school, so we have a great idea of what we need to consider when doing these things. Thank you, Dr. Peter, for getting the ball rolling on that initiative, and I hope that this year we can set up another tour and go see a different school and continue to be a part of what's going on, so we're giving accurate information and recommendations for Lee County Schools. Ms. Torres Nunez has been participating in the Success Academy Speaker Series. It continues just to show the impact that EDAC is having, as I consider it sort of like a tree branch, you know, EDAC being the tree and Mr. Edie being a branch and Ms. Crystal being a branch, and we continue to spread with the impact that EDAC has, just in a real sense, in a impactful sense that we can see in the human capital. So thank you, Ms. Torres, for the work you're doing out there representing EDAC. And always, Mr. Edie doing the job that you do, goes without being said. And then our 2 recommendations for this year, we decided to include diversity and inclusion questions on the annual survey to staff and students, and also involve community leaders in the communication process to bridge any remaining communication gaps that we have between the school district and the community. We faced a different year than we have in the past with a visitor we had in the spring that kind of changed the way we do things. This meeting is an example of that. And so we are still trying to make progress through EDAC, even though our challenges are a little different and at a distance. So I do want to say that I was happy with the progress we made last year. I was happy with the amount of presentations that we had to keep us informed and keep us on the cutting edge of what was next for the county, so that, you know, our recommendations could be as accurate and as authentic as possible. So I hope that we can continue that this year and come up with some other recommendations that continue to be on the forefront of what's going on in the county. Are there any questions about the presentation? Any highlights that I missed that anyone wants to share?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. Just from the standpoint, I think there were a few presentations that also included. I recall that the committee did have an opportunity to have questions and facilitated feedback related to safety and security with the resource officers. That was a summer meeting, as well as a facilitated conversation and feedback related to school reopening plans as it related to—
Yes, with Dr. Spiro.
Yeah, I have a question.
Yes.
So, Mr. Chairman, on this, the board recommendations, which talks about the diversity inclusion questions to the annual survey, I believe we talked about this question, but we, at least I haven't seen those questions. I'm not sure if the other board members have, if the other committee members have seen those questions. Can those questions be shared with us?
So we did talk about those questions, and I think we started to write the questions, and then once Corona hit and then we went virtual, I think our focus kind of changed some.
Yeah.
And so those were our recommendations, and I don't know that we actually wrote the question to go on to the survey because our focus changed.
Okay.
We can continue to work on those questions and get the ones that we want specifically to be included.
Okay.
And keep that on the table.
So that was never finalized?
No.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Actually, it was. The question that was included at the end of the year for the first survey question, after Mr. Malloy presented, I believe Ms. Thomas was still a recording secretary, and that question specifically went to, when I engage at my child's school, I feel that it is an environment that is supported with diversity or something to that level. We can ask Tony to send it back out. But right after that meeting, we did have an opportunity to engage with Mr. Malloy from a community engagement standpoint, and they altered the survey that was supposed to go out to the parents, and that question was included. So we can have that sent back out to the committee, but I'm not sure if anybody else recalls that conversation, but that question was included after Adam Malloy came to the meeting, and that question was provided to the committee. But we'll ask Tony to send it back out again.
Thank
you. Do you know if there were any results from the survey?
I don't know, but hopefully Mr. Malloy will be in the next meeting. He had an engagement tonight, but traditionally he is always here, as well as representatives from academic services. I see we have Ms. Brandy Macchia, the principal of Ravy Potoff, tonight, so she is joining us. Ms. Jessica Duncan could not make it. But toward that goal, Mr. Chairman, hopefully Mr. Malloy would be here and we can ask him that question about the survey. That question wasn't, there was a question to that point. There was a question on the last survey that went out right before the end of the year.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Yes, two points. Again, thank you for summing what we did. I think it's very good. Summary is very well done. I want to focus on an issue that was very important last year about the challenges of school reopening at the time of COVID. I would propose at this point that now that the schools will be there for about a month, in the next meeting, we have an item from the schools, from either the teacher or the school principal, to hear how are things working, what is going on. If you can have an item from a school principal or a school or even a teacher. I know some schools, I was talking to Miller Lakes and others, the challenges are interesting, and what thing you feel good about is how the teachers are able to adapt so well, and they can give an insight to this committee what is going on and how great it is. The other thing is about Adam Malloy. You said there's a meeting on community engagement. I thought I was part of that. I never got any email, and maybe I check with Mr. Edie's office what's happening with that, okay?
All right. So you're wanting a school employee to come in and give us a kind of a temperature of how things are going in the schools?
Right. I don't like this time from the people doing it in the school. I'm not talking about the split.
You're talking about the school employee, an actual school employee.
Yes.
Okay.
It'd be very nice to hear.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
this is Holly Marth. I love Peter's idea. I would especially like to see if we could get maybe 2 or 3 to get a few differing views on, not differing, but different views, perhaps elementary, middle, and high school, to see if there are any differences in how each of these age groups are handling things. I would assume that the older children are having a little bit of an easier time, where the younger ones may still be a little curious and concerned about why things are so different. But I love the idea, but I would certainly like to maybe expand upon it just a little bit and have perhaps one from each grade level, not grade level, but each school level.
Right.
And in view of that, Mr. Chairman, let me modify the motion because we just listened to the school board attorney. Mr. Chairman, I move that we invite in the next meeting 3 faculty teachers or principals from elementary, middle, and high school to just give us an idea so that we have that comparison. I totally agree with Hori, and that's why I modify my motion.
I would like to second that motion.
So are you seconding the modification?
Yes.
I would like to second Peter's modification that includes my idea of including all 3 age groups of the children.
Let's do this right. I withdraw the first motion. So this is, okay.
All right. So the motion on the floor is that we will have a representative from elementary, 1 representative elementary, middle, and high to come and give us a presentation on the current climate of the reopening plan, to give us an idea of how things are going in the schools.
Point of order.
Is that correct, Mr. Peter?
Yes, that's correct. Very well put, yes.
Before we move or vote or second or anything else like that, can we have some more discussion, because there might be some other modifications that can go into this.
Yes, Mr. Spirit.
There are 4 different levels of communication going on and education going on: in person, face to face, virtual, and the Lee Home Connect. I would think, as far as diversity is concerned, grade level is great, but also looking at the roles that the teachers and the parents and the students are working through. I think we need to hear from those also, not just a bunch of face-to-face teachers.
Okay.
You understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Ms. Holly.
I'm sorry. I agree with that also. And one point that I would like to make, Mr. Peter, if you can do this when you are modifying your motion, I hope that we don't choose just all principals or all teachers. I think it would be really interesting to get different points of view to see how things are going. I'm not involved in a school anymore. I was very involved for many years, but I'm not now because all of my kids have graduated, hence why I'm here. And I'm not, I'm hearing from a bunch of different parent friends and a few student friends, but I would love to hear from a couple of principals and or a couple of teachers, not just, you know, all principals or all teachers. And Mr. Sparrow, I love the idea of including the others. I apologize, I didn't think of that, but I think that's a great idea because I'm very concerned about how our kids and our teachers and principals and all of the staff are handling this incredible time of our lives.
Okay, so as the so as the idea expands, what I would ask is, how does this directly affect EDAC? What do we want them to present to us that has an impact on EDAC? So I don't want us to get presentations just to have presentations.
Right.
I think that one of the big things, if I may I?
You can start, then we'll go Mr. Sparrow, then we'll go to Dr. Peter.
Okay, I think a lot of the, and I hope that I'm not doing this the wrong way, guys. It's my first meeting here. Please forgive me if I do anything incorrectly. I think from what I'm seeing, a lot of the lower income parents who can't afford to stay at home much longer are the ones who are sending the children back to school. And I don't know how fair that is. It's almost like a school choice kind of thing. Ugh. I hate the fact that there may be some people who would rather be homeschooling right now and can't because of an economic difficulty on their part. So I would hate to be a parent with a child in school right now. So I think that it does have a lot to do with our committee and what we look to improve upon. No, you're
Thank you,
mute,
Ms.
Dennis.
Holly. Mr. Sparrow, and I see your hand, Mr. Scott, also.
I think this is a very good diversity issue that we need to focus on to make sure our kids that are of different socioeconomic status and learning abilities and language difficulty and things of that nature, access to internet, Wi-Fi, these things are key. And if we want to make sure every kid gets the greatest opportunity to learn and advance in this multi-tiered, never tried before system, we have to be very, very cognizant of tracking the successes and failures and cutting off and giving them the support that they need for those parents, especially dealing with those ESOL kids and things of that nature that language is a barrier.
Okay.
I'd rather be on talking about and notating and looking and going and guiding the ship as we go than to wait after people fail and everything else. We see the 9 weeks, all the kids that are Black and Latino and Haitian students all failed. And we're like, oh, now we need to do something. No, we need to be cognizant of that right now from the beginning so we don't have any cracks that people fall in. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Sparrow. Dr. Peter?
Yes, I'm just finishing lighting my motion. Mr. Chairman, in view of the discussion, and I respect what Mr. Sparrow and Ms. Holly have just said, I move that the Diversity and Inclusion Office invites 3 diverse instructors to educate the committee on challenges of opening the schools, and they consider the issues raised by the members of the committee.
Okay.
That's too long.
Second.
Now, before we move forward, can we hold your motion and listen to Ms. Siscon's comment, just to make sure all ideas have been shared before we make the motion?
I'm fine with that. Yes, okay.
Okay. Ms. Siscon?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can you hear me with these headphones on?
Yes.
I wanted to bring up 2 points that both Ms. Marth and Mr. Sparrow brought up that have come to my attention. The first thing is the previous to, I want to say a week ago, children who were on virtual school were not, sorry, my dog, were not eligible for free and reduced lunch. Now, currently, I am aware of the Harry Chapin Food Bank in Cape Coral where I live, and also of the Harry Chapin Food Bank in Fort Myers, because I know of people in Fort Myers. And every Friday, the line opens up at 9 in the morning, is 3 blocks long to get food. And a lot of the parents there are telling me that the reason that they had to put their children in school is because they don't have food. And then I have another friend whose child is a ESL student. He can't get services unless he goes face to face. So I have people I know, friends in my community, who feel like they don't have a choice, that they can't go to the food bank unless their children go to school. And I feel maybe this is enough to form a committee to look into not just these aspects, but also the mental health repercussions that we have of these children coming back in the midst of what's going on right now. I mean, I know that extra mental health was discussed at the last meeting, but we should probably have some feedback on how that's going, so that, as Mr. Sparrow pointed out, we're able to evolve into what's going on while it's happening, rather than just solving problems. Thank you.
Thank you,
Mr.
Mrs.
Chairman,
Scott. Yes,
if we
sir.
may, as always, we do have representatives from Student Affairs and Administration here. Ms. Macchia, do you have any thoughts to maybe address some of Ms. Siscon's concerns and some of the points that she brought up from a building level administrator, specifically about the food support and the feeding of children with Home Connect and also Leave Virtual?
Sure. So students who are eligible, so within the school, we're running live face-to-face, and we also have Home Connect. So the Home Connect students are eligible to come, and there's lots of sites around, and they can come and they actually pick up 5 days worth. So they choose, it's either a Tuesday or a Thursday, and they come and pick up 10 meals. So they pick up breakfast and lunch for their entire 5 days. Virtual school has never provided breakfast or lunch, just by nature of virtual school. So I know that that's where they kind of started to partner with Harry Chapin as far as with that. But from that being said, I also heard mention about like some of the ESOL support and those kind of things. Again, virtual school is a separate school and has kind of always within our district operated within its own guise. But within the schoolhouse, we're offering face-to-face as well as Home Connect. And we're providing services to both of those, no matter which, whatever service delivery model you're in. So I have ESOL support that is pushing in and doing breakout rooms through Zoom for any of those Home Connects. So we are trying the schoolhouse, again, virtual school looks a little different and it kind of is operating as it always is. It was just another offering that we have, but within the school building, we're trying to provide those services. Again, they do have to look a little different, but we are trying to make sure that the services are as equal as possible, whether they're Home Connect or whether they're face-to-face.
And Mr. Sparrow had a question. He said, was it made clear that virtual school would not have the food option like the Lee Home Connect students have?
So I'm going to say, just from my perspective, I'm not honestly sure. When the communications were coming out, I don't know that we talked a lot about food. I think what was pushed from the district a lot was really just trying to get clarification around each of those models. I do know that each of our individual schools were asked to reach out to all of our students who had requested virtual school to make sure that they really understood what virtual school went. So I will tell you that I'm in elementary school and I service about 85% minority. And we did reach out to each of those families and have a conversation of, let's talk about your learner and let's talk about what style and what were some of their concerns. So we did have a large number of our virtual school that switched to Home Connect. And I do know that as principals, we all did have those conversations, but I don't know from the district communications, I didn't hear a lot about the individual food. I don't know that that was probably pushed as much.
And I'm not sure if Lee Virtual School, I don't know what their explanation was during their presentations, how much they went into with the lunches also. Traditionally, they have not provided any sort of lunches on a weekly basis like the schools do, where they give the food for the weekend. So
I just wanted to finish with, you know, we have been in this pandemic for, I believe, 7 months. I could be wrong. And during that time, there's been one stimulus check from the government, and many people are struggling right now. So I just wanted to put that out there.
Okay. Okay, so in the
Mr.
being
Chairman,
conscious of everyone's time.
Ms. Vaughn's hand is up, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, excuse me. The reason that initially the virtual school was not offering the meals is because it was against the federal regulations. I think USDA, and I'm not remembering the specifics, but it seems to me that there has been just recently a waiver which has allowed us to distribute food to the Lee virtual students as well.
And Ms. Vaughn,
thank you, Ms. Vaughn.
We'll get additional information that we can provide to the committee through the recording secretary, Ms. Vaughn, and we'll work on that tomorrow.
Good, good, yeah, because I think it was passed.
Okay.
Okay. So Dr. Peter has put a motion in the chat box. The DI, that stands for diversity and inclusion. Dr.
Yes.
Peter?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm going to read it out loud. I move that the Diversity and Inclusion Office invite 3 instructors from diverse backgrounds to educate the EDAC committee on the challenges being experienced in schools arising from the COVID-19 pandemic. And when you say diverse backgrounds, are you talking about diverse in the level of school they represent? Or
I need to make that
their ethnicity?
Let me answer that correctly. Initially, Mr. Chairman never even thought about the diversity. Then Hori came in and talked about the schools, 3 levels of schools. Then Mr. Sparrow pointed out a few other issues. And in this conversation, there's been very many, and I'm quite sure Mr. Edie and Ms. Crystal and the team, they have taken into account all the aspects. We cannot invite everybody, but at least 3, considering what the committee has expressed. I want to leave that to the office of Mr. Edie
Okay.
and Ms. Crystal, whatever they consider, knowing what the committee has mentioned.
So we may want to consider grouping together middle and high school into secondary.
Not really. I just wanted it to be diverse because what Mr. Sparrow mentioned earlier on, I thought it might even be more important to consider when they're taking that into consideration, because the different ways of doing instruction this time, and whereas elementary, middle, and high are important, the other issues Mr. Sparrow pointed out are also very important.
Okay. So can I make a motion that we change backgrounds to diverse educational platforms?
I'm fine with that.
So that we can cover the face-to-face and the virtual?
Anything that would cover all the different aspects that the committee has expressed.
Okay.
Are you asking me to modify my motion, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, please.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the DI office invite 3 instructors from diverse educational platforms to educate the EDA committee on the challenges being experienced in schools arising from COVID-19 pandemic.
I still second.
Thank you. Thank you, Hori.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
Yeah, I see your question. And then we have a question from Ms. Layla. Yes, I'll take your question before we close the motion.
So the question I have is regarding the choice of virtual Lee Home Connect and in-person learning.
Yes.
I seem to remember a conversation that the district was going to be flexible in making sure that it was the right choice for the student. And when does that choice to move expire, or when does it end?
So there's a difference with the Lee Home Connect students. You are still connected to your face-to-face school. So from my experience with it, if a student is not successful in Lee Home Connect and wants to change, they are currently changing. With Lee Virtual School, it is a separate school from their brick and mortar school. Those students are also allowed to change back, but from my understanding, the window is shorter. So I think that the Lee Home Connect students are able to, they're able to change back currently from Lee Home Connect, and then we have some students that are going from face-to-face to Lee Home Connect. Are you wanting to know like an exact date of when they can no longer switch?
Right, so those that enrolled in virtual rather than Lee Home Connect,
Mm-hmm.
is there a drop dead deadline for them to request a change of educational delivery?
Yeah, are you raising your hand, Ms. Vaughn?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, a couple things. First of all, the deadline for change was just passed September 11th. So last Friday was the deadline for change. Generally speaking, Lee Home Connect, if you want to go back face to face, the next opening is at the end of the 9 weeks. Because of the curriculum at Lee Virtual, at this point, it would need to be at the end of the semester. And that's because the curriculum that is at Lee Virtual School is entirely different. I mean, it's the same courses. You have English and you have science and all of that. But it's not something that you could just mesh in at, you know, and get full credit at the semester, at the 9 weeks. It has to be at the semester. And something else, you may have seen me looking at my phones. I was correct in what I said a few minutes earlier, if you don't mind me reading this. This is from Lauren Stillwell. As we shared earlier this week, the USDA announced the SF, I'm not sure what this stands for, SFSP waiver extension. This will allow us to feed our virtual students during the same time that we are feeding Lee Home Connect students. And the staff was working on that, putting together a plan, and it lists the details of what the students need to have, their student ID and so on and so forth. So to answer that question from before, most definitely the Lee Virtual are getting the opportunity to get the grab and go meals either on a Tuesday or a Thursday. And as was mentioned before, typically the virtual schools would not have the food. I do not believe the students who were there during the fourth quarter last year would have been, they were not actually eligible for the grab and go, but it was a very small number of students as opposed to now several thousand students at that. So hopefully that answers a couple of your questions.
Okay. Ms. Layla, you had a question? You're still on mute, Ms. Layla. There you go.
Sorry. When Peter mentioned the diverse teachers, are you talking about experienced diverse teachers to come and speak? Because I kind of think maybe administration can come in as well. Teachers are great to have, but someone from administration from a school can come in as well.
Yeah, we changed it to diverse educational platforms to try to cover some of the different virtual, face-to-face, Lee Home Connect, all those aspects. So I don't know that there was a specific motion for specific people to come, specific personnel to come, but we wanted a representation of the different educational platforms. because Mr. Sparrow had mentioned some concerns about some of our minority students and low socioeconomic students falling through the cracks without opportunities for virtual if they wanted to have it, just due to lack of access. So I don't know that we have any specific personnel that we want to invite.
Okay, because the grade, like with high school and middle school, like elementary is easy, but high school and middle school, they have different subjects and electives. So
right.
Would it be someone from like African American history, or, you know, what grade level would they come in? Would it be a new teacher that just came in, or somebody who's been there 5 years, 10 years? That's my only concern.
So my concern with this is it's a great idea, and I like the concept. I feel like we're starting to, it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And so we have to narrow it down to make the presentation worthwhile. I mean, because we could listen to a presentation from K through 12 of different people first year, 10 year, 15 year, and get different aspects of what's going on. If we're looking to just get an idea, then I kind of want to do something kind of general and then see if we even need to move further with it if we're satisfied with what we have. But I don't want us to get so broad and try to get so much information that our original point gets lost.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So the motion from Mr. Peter is still on the table. I'm going to read Ms. Reed's comment out loud since she did take the time to type it. The school district did a fantastic job communicating these 4 options and providing clarification to parents through presentations and I believe Facebook and either live or tape meetings. They also did a wonderful job this summer getting buses out to community drop points for students to pick up daily meals. Just as we were talking, I was able to pull up their communications through the summer if we have questions on what was sent out to parents. Since we are recording, I want to read that out loud so that's part of the record. And so it looks like Mr. Peter, or Dr. Peter has added his motion to the chat box, which I'll read out loud. Mr. Chairman, I move that the Diversity and Inclusion Office invite 3 instructors from diverse platforms to educate the EDAC committee on the challenges being experienced in schools arising from the COVID-19 pandemic.
I continue to second.
And what I wanted was that to give the Office of Diversity and Inclusion some latitude to select. They have had, they are here with us. That's why they come to the meetings. They'll hear what we have said, and they'll get the individuals that will simply represent the interests of the committee.
Okay.
Thank you, Holly, for the seconding. Yeah.
All right.
Of course.
So we have the motion from Dr. Peter, and we have the second from Ms. Holly.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
May I ask a question through the chair? I guess when inviting the 3 instructors, going back to the conversation that you had with Ms. Tucker earlier, do you all feel they'll be in a posture where you all might be asking questions and having classroom instructors who might be at the point to not be able to address some of the challenges from a school-wide perspective? Of course, the challenges that they consider in their classroom, would you all be amenable to just having a diverse panel of teachers and administrators to give that latitude? Because the way it looks now, it just says 3 teachers, and I think to Ms. Tucker's point, what I heard her say is that you might not be able to get some feedback about some of the pluses and the challenges that are being experienced in the classroom perspective, as well as an administrative perspective, as was provided by Ms. Mackey earlier. So,
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Just to answer Mr. Eddy's question, I like the idea about a panel. And if you consider even what Ms. Leila and everybody has talked about, create a panel of 3 diverse people, and then we can have a conversation so that if each one of them is not comfortable answering any question, another one can. And when you are there with the chairman, knows what's going on in the schools. Also, I saw him in, you know, waving words. So,
okay.
Yeah, we can have a panel. I would like a panel, yeah.
All right. So the motion is now to have a panel. Are you raising your hand, Ms. Leila?
No, I'm saying, like, I don't want it to get lost but then I don't want, I mean, because if you want to know like what's going on in the class and how diverse, I mean, I can tell you that because I'm at Lehigh Middle, and I can tell you how the kids are struggling with the home connect, and it seems like the kids who are, I don't want to say well off, but the kids who are able to stay home are doing better than the kids who are in the classroom. So bringing in 3 instructors, how would that benefit the committee? I honestly think if you want to bring in anybody, it should be more of administration, because to
Well, Mr.
me,
Edie
they're
said,
more.
Mr. Edie has suggested a combination of administrators and instructors. So it would be a combo.
Then, right, but don't make it so big to where it's more than what it should be.
Right. And I would suggest that the questions that we want to ask of the panel, we submit to Ms. Carroll ahead of time so that the panel is aware of the questions and we can kind of streamline the process. So we don't spend all evening just firing questions to them. And at least they'll have an idea of what we want to know so they can bring the information that we want.
Right.
So in the interest of time, we're gonna move through this motion. So here we go. I'm gonna see if I can paraphrase the motion. Mr. Chairman, I move that the Diversity and Inclusion Office invite a panel of instructors and administrators from diverse platforms to educate the EDAC committee on the challenges being experienced in schools arising from the COVID-19 pandemic.
That is what I wanted to say, Mr. Sherman. So I move it.
I knew we'd get there.
Yes.
All right, so is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Ms. Holly, all right.
I give you peace, but I'm giving my second motion as well.
All right. So all in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right. Thank you, Ms. Carroll. Did you get everything you needed from that?
Yes, I did.
Okay. All right. So next on our list is the approval of committee meeting dates. Those are posted there from Mr. Edie. Please take a moment to look at those.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
in
sir.
addition to the committee deciding the meeting dates for the upcoming academic year, there also needs to be addressed the delivery model of the meetings. Right now, we've conducted Zoom because that's what we decided toward the end of the years related to COVID-19 and remote meetings and communications. But the committee needs to decide if you're going to go forward with your meetings for the year on this platform, or if you're going to move back to have in-person meetings.
Okay. So do you want to do this in 2 separate motions?
I guess,
The
sir, it's
dates?
however the chair and the committee sees to be
All right.
appropriate.
So we'll do it in 2 separate motions. We'll start with the dates and then we'll do the platform. So seeing the dates that are in front of you, is there a motion to accept the dates as they are written?
I'll make the motion to accept the dates as they are written.
Thank you. And
No
is there-
dates are going to be perfect for everyone.
And is there a second?
Second, Lubna Alam.
Thank you. The motion is carried for the dates as they are written. The next motion on the table, the next question is, do we want to continue in the current Zoom model for our meetings? Or do we want to, I guess we'd have to monitor the situation and go by whatever CDC guidelines, district guidelines are being presented and proceed from there.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Sean Williams. I would entertain having a mixture of both. Maybe 2 live meetings and the rest through Zoom. Maybe at certain stopping points, maybe December and March, maybe having live meetings and then have Zoom meetings for the remainder of the months? If that would work for the district.
All right. That is an option. I was going to suggest that we, I guess, kind of treat it as a individual meeting decision and monitor the situation and decide now, October 12th, if we want to come face to face or if we want to do virtual, and then October 12th decide November 9th. Only because, as we've seen, we don't know what's going to happen with the pandemic, and I don't want us to commit to something that we have to go back and change later.
Do you need one of us to make that motion?
If I may offer really quick, Ms. Holly, before you all make a discussion, just from a staff standpoint, of course, it's ultimately your decision. However, it requires those of us here to reserve appropriate space. And I'm not sure if doing a month by month, volleying back and forth gives enough time to get sufficient space reserved for the committee, et cetera. So it would be amenable if you all kind of took maybe Sean's approach or however you all decide, but I would just say scheduling October's meeting and then coming back in November and doing that again might create a logistical issue because there are people now, we have the room on hold pending this, but they need it for bargaining and a few other things that are happening in the space that we usually use. So it would be easier for us if you all just gave us a chunk and not do the back and forth deciding between virtual and in person.
All right. So what about doing virtual from now until December, and then in December make the decision how to proceed from there?
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I would like to make the motion that we continue to meet through Zoom at least until this semester ends for January. What is that? Is that a semester, or is that a, what do they call that chunk of it?
It would be a semester. Our last one would be December 14th for this semester. January 11th would be a new semester.
Yes, because we've just opened schools, and like you said, we would have to make commitments, not just to reserving the space, making the staff there. Yeah, I'd like to stay on Zoom if possible. I would like to make the motion to continue to meet on Zoom and reevaluate at the beginning of the new semester.
So
I would second that motion.
Reevaluate in December.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so there's a motion on the table that we stay in Zoom for our next 3 meetings and then reevaluate our meeting platform on December 14th meeting.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I would like to second that motion that Crystal just made. However, being new, I don't know, the only person I know here really is Carl. I would love the opportunity if we could all have the chance to meet. I would like to know who I'm serving here with this year. So I don't know if are we even allowed to meet outside of meetings or no, as a group? Does anyone know?
So we are covered by Sunshine Law.
Right.
And it gets very sticky when more than 2 members meet, because you're not supposed to talk about anything relating to EDAC business or other committee business.
Right.
So I would suggest to wait till we are face to face with introductions.
Agree. Mr. Edie, how long of a notice do we need to have the room that would sufficiently hold all of us?
I would say, so my strategy would be this. If you all are conducting the meetings via Zoom for the next 3 meetings, if your motion passes, any subsequent meetings after December, I'll ask them to reserve that space, and we cancel if necessary at that point, but I'd rather have the space reserved and not need it than need it and not have it. So it would be easier for us if we could just do it as you all are moving forward for the balance of the year, and then any dates outside of that, we'll ask for the space to be reserved and cancel if necessary.
Okay.
I hope that answered your question.
Yes, sir, it did. I keep my motion for I keep my second for Crystal.
All right. So we need to vote on the motion. The motion is that we maintain having our Zoom meetings up until the December 14th meeting. At the December 14th meeting, we will decide the future platforms for subsequent meetings, either face-to-face or continue with Zoom. Mr. Edie will reserve the subsequent meetings after December 14th. And if we need to, we will cancel our room reservations. So all in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? All right, the motion is carried. Thank you. All right, moving on to our update from our board liaison.
In the interest of time, I'm going to be very brief. First of all, I want to welcome any of you that are new to EDACT, and I want to welcome back those of you who are serving for your second year or who renewed your application to be on this committee again. The only other thing, we concluded our community effort, School Heroes Wear Masks, and if you know the district building, the Caloosahatchee room, the big, huge room, there are masks all over the place that are currently being sorted. Tune in, I will give you information next time because we will be continuing, not on the same level, but we will be continuing. And we are, by the way, the first schools that will be receiving those masks. We're starting with the Title I schools.
Thank you, Ms. Vaughn.
Yeah, that's it.
Thank you very much. Mr. Edie.
Yes, sir. Congratulations, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Vice Chairman, congratulations to our new members. Welcome to the committee, to our returning members and our board liaison. It's great to see you all return with us. I have a question for our recording secretary as well as the chair. Madam Recording Secretary, do we have acknowledgement of the vote to both approve the meeting dates and also the meeting platform delivery model? Did we conduct complete votes on both of those issues?
No, I do not recall doing so.
Okay, so I believe we need to go back and actually approve the meeting dates, Mr. Chairman. I'm not sure if we took that motion. I think the last motion was for the opportunity to discuss through how we're going to meet there, but I think there was a missing vote somewhere in there.
Okay.
Between those two.
So is there a motion to accept the dates as they are written for the balance of the year?
Yes.
The meeting dates.
Move.
All right, and is there a second?
John Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. So Mr. Sparrow, he made the initial motion and Mr. Williams seconded the motion. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Thank you. The motion is carried to continue with the dates as they are written for subsequent meetings.
And an additional point, also, Mr. Chairman, we need an official time. Right now, the meetings have been called at 5:30, but the committee has the discretion to set an actual time as well.
Okay. Is there any discussion on the current time for the meetings?
I move that we make it 5:30 as in past.
All right, is there a second to that motion?
Second.
There's a motion on the floor to keep the time at 5:30 for our meetings. And then, was that a second from you, Mr. Sparrow?
Yes.
All right. All right, all in favor of keeping the meetings at 5:30, please say aye.
Aye. Aye. Aye.
And any opposed? All right, so the motion is carried that we will continue to have our meetings at 5:30 p.m.
So that's all I have for updates. After this meeting, I'll work with our chair as well as our board liaison to give them an opportunity to talk through some of their ideas for the committee's consideration as it relates to possible topics and how you all want to progress through the year for the committee's consideration based on board policy. It does set that the committee chair as well as the board liaison should consult and create conversation as about agenda. So I'll be working with you, Mr. Chairman, and you, Ms. Vaughn, to set up that opportunity for you all to have that conversation via Zoom, if appropriate.
And sorry, question for you, Mr. Edie.
Yes, sir.
Are you having the newsletter continuing, or what's going on with that?
I'm sorry, sir?
The newsletter from your office.
Yes, actually, the first draft of it is on my desk right now to look at.
So how do we get it? Do we get it when it's completed? Or you give
Yes,
it to us?
as always, you'll get it after it's completed, but we're looking in the first draft of it now, Dr. Dianui. So once it's drafted and ready to be sent for public consumption and sent out to the staff, as always, you'll get a copy of it as a part of correspondence sent to you from the recording secretary.
Appreciated.
All right, thank you, Mr. Edie. Ms. Carroll, do we have any, sorry, good of the order. Do you have any comments for good of the order?
Mr. Chairman, just one last point. Also, to the committee's feedback, some additional information will be coming to you from your question from the last meeting about the proximity plan. Mr. Bruno did mention the proximity plan and the committee's involvement. After this meeting, or I'm sorry, after the meeting we had in August, the chairman at the time, who is now your chairman again, was invited to be a part of those conversations related to the proximity plan. So in addition to staff coming back and giving you an update, the chair is now a part of some of those groups before it goes out to public consumption and the public feedback sessions that are starting to happen. So I just want to make sure you are aware that based on your feedback, Dennis was invited. And now he is the chair, he'll still be a part of that based on your election tonight. But I wanted to bring that up based on what Mr. Bruno mentioned earlier.
Thank you, Mr. Edie. All right, is there any comment for good of the order? All right. Ms. Carroll, do we? Is that you, Mr. Williams?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. One of the other things that we may consider for future meetings, just so we can plan ahead a bit, is possibly revisiting the non-discrimination and how it was put into policy so that everyone can review that. And then also the school that I would be most interested in visiting because of its lack of potential lack of diversity would be Three Oaks Elementary.
Three Oaks. Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Williams. Any other comments for good of the order?
I would like to make a suggestion that for other intents and purposes, with Zoom, there are so many other features that are not being featured in this concerning voting and things of that nature that could make things a lot smoother. I would recommend we allow the voting reactions and things of that nature. Is that a possibility?
So you're saying that exploring some more features of Zoom for our motions and votings of that nature, and to make the process more efficient?
Correct.
Okay. We can look into that.
There are ways you can vote yes and no and things of that nature, and people can tally it and everything else, and it won't take the longest process. Ayes and trying to count, it might be 5 ayes and 6 no's, but the ayes are louder. You follow what I'm saying? It's a lot more precise.
Right. Yeah, we can look into that feature. Okay. Ms. Carroll, do we have anything from public comment?
No, we do
Mr. Chair.
not at this time.
Mr. Chair? I'm
Yes.
sorry. For the good of the order, I'm sorry. I would like to also say that I would like for us to go into the non-discrimination and the changes again too, but we had a meeting over the summer where items were presented to us as a committee, and then we talked about people who came to us coming back and giving us more information and looking further into it. And I just wanted to make sure, if this is the meeting that you're planning the agenda for the year, that we also continue to look into what we were discussing about the number of children from Lee County schools who were arrested, and we had the people who came in and talked to us about the the policies we had in place for that. And I really think that that needs to go on the agenda for this year. We need to continue to look into that.
Okay, can you email your questions directly to Ms. Caro, and then we can filter who needs to come to answer those questions, just so we get specifically what you want answered. I remember the conversation you're referring to, and I just want to make sure we cover the information that you'd like to hear.
And Mr. Chairman, I think also what Ms. Siscon might be referring to additionally, and I please don't want to speak for her, so if I'm off, please let me know, Crystal. I think she's going back to the committee's conversation about some of the issues brought up by Dr. Dianui. And so the presentations after that related to school policy, related to some of those elements would be something that I'll share with the chairman. And that we would kind of plan.
Yes,
so I think that's what she's referring to, Mr. Chairman. Just looking
Yes.
at those 5 key areas and just making sure that those presentations, some of those go back to that. Is that
Right.
correct?
Yes. Yeah, we were choosing parts of what Dr. Inouye presented. What we were doing was taking a piece of those and presenting one piece per meeting, so that we got an opportunity to explore all of those items. So we can continue to look into those, and we'll expand on the information that you requested, Mrs. Khan. All right. So before we go, I do want to say thank you for having the faith in me to give me the opportunity to be chair for another year. I do enjoy working with each of you. You all provide different perspectives and ideas on the equity and diversity of this county. And I feel like your influence even exceeds the county into our state and our nation. It's been interesting already working with our new members. You already bring a breath of fresh air and energy to the committee, which I accept, and I'm looking forward to learning more about. And I hope that this year, even though we are working in a different platform for now, we continue to be involved and we continue to be engaged in what we're doing, and being out there and trying to get as much done for equity and diversity in our county as we can. And so I applaud you for continuing to volunteer. And again, I say thank you for having the faith in me to let me continue being a part of this also. I just want to check the chat box before we go. Mr. Sparrow, you said, when's the deadline to include agenda items before the next meeting? If I remember correctly, I think it's a week before the meeting, Mr. Edie. Is that correct?
If I understand Mr. Sparrow's question, I think it goes back to Mr. Sparrow. Traditionally, how the committee has worked, the committee chair came back and facilitated a conversation with the general committee and set out the course of talking points for the year. And the committee got an opportunity to vote up or vote down the chair and the board liaison suggestion. So that's traditionally is how the agenda worked. And then from there, we worked to get people to come in with those presentations based on what the committee voted on. So last year, a major talking point, Mr. Sparrow, was about communication. So a lot of the presentations went back to communication in the midst of going remote with meetings and having an opportunity to meet during the summer. Dr. Dianui presented some information as it relates to how can you check for issues like systemic racism in a school district, and I think that's what Crystal was referring to. So the presentation about engagement with resource officer, et cetera, went back toward that. So the deadline would be how the chair wants to do it. I think, Dennis, how you and Ms. Jordan did, you all came back and started the process of discussion. Had small table groups and came up with, here's some things we want to work on for the year. But it was the committee, Mr. Sparrow, making the ultimate decision, and then staff making sure that people were there to kind of do those presentations.
I don't think that answered my question. So there's no addendums that we just talk about agenda items or things that we're concerned in the good of the order. Is that the process that we're following on this board?
When you say an addendum, you mean addendum to the main agenda or just talking points for consideration?
In other organizations, one of the points of order for Robert's rules is it asks for addendums or additions to the agenda that's voted on or whatever, but I would not want to follow that, but that really wasn't a question asked. So I'm just I'm new here, so I'm trying to figure out how y'all do things.
So if I'm understanding correctly, Mr. Sparrow, you're asking about the deadline to submit an idea to be put onto the agenda. Is that correct?
An item, yes.
Yes. I asked for at least a week so that if you do have an item that requires some research or further information, that does give time to review that item to make sure that the information you can request it can be requested in that time or be put onto the next meeting. Does that answer your question?
I think it's also important to point out to Mr. Sparrow that there's a section, a standing section called for the good of the order, and we can bring up other items too that were not there in the main agenda.
Yeah. So there isn't a direct blueprint for what the meetings are going to be for the rest of the year. It is one of those situations where we look to you as the committee members to bring things to the committee that need to be addressed. A lot of the presentations we had this past year were based on committee members' ideas and concerns, and then we address those concerns by having the people who are in charge of those things come out, present, and answer those questions. So I do want you to feel like you have input, and I do want you to feel like you have input ahead of time on what the meetings could be about. And if you think of something during the meeting that you'd like to see in the next meeting, that good of the order section is what Dr. Inui was talking about to suggest. And then that gives me an idea of what to do as we proceed for the next meeting.
Okay.
All right.
But to Mr. Sparrow's point, that you mentioned about a blueprint. The for sure blueprint, Mr. Sparrow, is that the board policy says that the committee chair and the board liaison are responsible for helping set the agenda. And how they've traditionally done it, they've worked with the committee to kind of get their feedback before the agenda is set. So as far as the blueprint goes, Mr. Sparrow, it would be the board policy that establishes the committee. It says that the board chair, along with the board liaison, committee chair, I should say, and the board liaison.
So submitted to both of you, submitted to Dr. Tony Carroll. Who do we submit it?
Yes. Submit everything through Ms. Carroll, and then she divulges the information out to us. Again, that goes through all the sunshine protocols. So anything that you have for the committee, anything you have for me, always go through Ms. Carroll first.
Thank you.
All right. All right, well, thank you again, everyone. I am excited about this new year. And please, if you have anything that you have that you'd like to share, like I said, please let Ms. Carroll know, and we will start working on getting the information out to the group. And if there is...
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, the meeting starts at 5:30 and ends when? What is the end time?
Well, the end time is a great question. It depends on how much comment we have. And
No, we always had an end time.
Yes.
I'm not going to look at two people in particular, but I think there's two people in particular that...
The chairman, of course.
So I'm nervous about putting an end time on the meetings just because there are some things that we get involved in that need to be completed. What we should suggest is being cognizant of everyone's time and making sure that we're all working towards the same goal. So if we want to have an end time, we can. In my time here, we've traditionally tried to just honor everyone's time and get the items done as soon as we can. So.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
That was a question that I had actually, just for planning purposes, because I know in the past we've allowed an hour, but it's never really lasted an hour. But like you said, there are some people that have more concerns than others, and understandably so. But if we can give it a time frame for those of us who have things, you know, I have to go pick up my baby from dance at 7:30, she's gonna wait. But I mean, if we can have a time frame, we can plan accordingly. That would be great.
Right, I understand. Yes, Mr. Williams.
Mr. Chairman, I would make the motion that we set a soft stop at 7 p.m. and then a hard stop at 7:30.
I'd second that.
Second.
All right. So there's a motion that we have a soft stop at 7 p.m. and a hard stop at 7:30. And then there's been a second by Ms. Holly Marth.
I agree, Sean. I think that's a good idea. I think that there are going to be times when we're just going to have to give a little more time than what we all want to. But if we have a particular, as Laura said, if we have a particular goal, then at least we know what we're shooting for. So I think that's a great idea. Soft and hard. That's awesome.
Thank you.
All right. So let's take a vote on this motion. The motion is that we have a soft stop time of 7 and a hard stop time of 7:30. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, so the motion is carried. Mr. Sparrow, I'll be working on finding out an efficient way to continue our voting. And if there is no other business or nothing else for the order, is there a motion to adjourn for this evening?
Move to adjourn.
I'll make a motion.
So, Ms. Holly Marth, our new member and our new
Your new
motion
mouth.
maker.
Yes.
Is there a second?
Sean Williams.
Second.
All right, we have a second by Sean Williams. All those in favor of adjourning the meeting for this evening?
Aye.
I think it was everybody that time. Any opposed? All right, we will see you guys next month. Stay safe, and I wish you guys all the best.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.